Darkness is often thought of as a negative period, but it is neither positive or negative. Darkness represents the void of which all life and energy springs from, as it is the seat of creativity. When we close our eyes or enter a dark space, our imagination flourishes, and we gain access to our inner world. Darkness is also calming to our energy and nervous system. It helps our mind quiet, and in that space, our intuition becomes louder. We can hear our inner guidance and receive answers instead of searching for them. We can peer into our subconscious at a higher level. When we meditate, for instance, we travel into darkness as we close our eyes and reduce sensory input from the external world. In this place, we can broaden our internal senses to feel patterns of behavior and conditioning buried deep below our conscious mind. We can see our blocks, our shadows, but we can also see our dreams and our true desires. Darkness gives us a greater view of who we are and what we want in this world. So, that is a quote about darkness from Jill Winterstein of Spirit Daughter. This is a book that I purchased back in 2019 when I was becoming a certified astrologist through Rebecca Gordon's astrology school here in New York. And I wanted to start off this module with that quote because Rise from the Ashes is actually a playoff of being a Scorpio and the journey of Scorpio, how it is a scorpion and then it changes into a phoenix. And so when it's a scorpion, it's living in dark places. And, we're in the middle of Scorpio season now. The sun is in Scorpio, the moon is in Leo. It's a great day to be on camera, which is why I am taping these modules now, but it coincidentally linked up. However, the theme of Rise from the Ashes is a dark theme. And so, like I said in the previous module, Scorpio is all about welcoming the darkness into their lives and teaches the other zodiac signs to do the same thing. So a Scorpio stellium like myself is the perfect person to talk to you about dark times when it comes in the workplace. And so that is the focus, obviously, of Rise from the Ashes. You already know that. But as I keep telling people about this course, more people are coming forward to me about their experiences in the workplace and how toxicity has shown up for them. And, I touched on the people at my previous jobs. I like to call them energy vampires. And I think that you can use that same term to describe maybe your bosses or coworkers that really drain your energy as well. But it's interesting because as I was talking to some people that have come forward, a revelation came up while I was, sharing my experience and listening to theirs, was that energy vampires, when they see a person as a threat, like for instance myself, or maybe it's you, that's why you're taking this course. When you come up with a good idea or try to change their old ways that have been benefiting them for so long, those energy vampires, those toxic people, will come out of the woodwork. So when you raise a concern and when you start to negate toxicity, you can really see how others in the company or the community will react, and hopefully that will give you ammunition about your choice to leave, or maybe just start looking for something new. I have a couple different other stories that I want to share really briefly, and it's going back to KPMG when I really realized I wanted to get out of this job. And I also had a tough experience while working there where my apartment flooded in New York City. I was living in Alphabet City, and it was in the middle of winter, and it was cold as hell outside. And to not be able to sleep in my bed because after the flood, all my personal belongings were totally ruined, and the landlord at the time didn't do anything to help. So I remember going into work and having to wear like sweatpants because I didn't have any of my professional clothes anymore. They were all ruined in this flood. Also, I was just like barely sleeping, just because I was in busy season again, and it was a different client, different team. But I also didn't have like a place to live anymore. And I remember telling my performance management leader, which at the time was a new person since the beginning of my time at KPMG, about the situation and what I should do to kind of deal with it during busy season. And her response to me was, that she's been experiencing the same thing. Her apartment has been being renovated and it's been so annoying to deal with because there's constant construction going on, and that I need to just see the silver lining. And so when she tried to make it about herself and tried to totally undermine the fact that my situation was nothing like hers, I mean, you're talking about someone that has literally lost everything, that gets paid so much lower than you. And then she was talking about how, she was getting a renovation and making her space a lot more inviting. I mean, it was just a huge indication that this was not the place for me to work. So, like I said, I was raising a concern, and she didn't really help. She made it like kind of worse. And so the sirens, the red lights went off in my head, and I was like, all right, I definitely need to get out of here. So I want to say that when people are messing around with you while things are happening, like maybe you're grieving, or maybe you're going through a hard time, like where your apartment floods or you got hit by a car, and you raise that concern and say, hey, I need some help. Can you like kind of go easy on me during this time as I kind of figure out my personal life? If those people don't help, run. Get out of the job. These people are bad. It's not worth your time. So another quick story is the fact that right now it seems like it's a time of massive layoffs because of the inflation. And so I've talked to some people that work in specific industries where people are getting laid off like left and right. And that's a really challenging time as well. Just like if you have to decide that you need to leave. Overall, it's just tough, and you're kind of in the darkness when you either get laid off or you decide to leave. But in the darkness, you can find a lot of creativity. And I guess one thing I want to leave with you all is that, like a Scorpio, we have accepted the hard road and we've lived in the ashes, but now we are ready to rise. And this is where it's going to get really good, and quite frankly, why I am here developing this course for you all. The natal chart is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I don't know if you know, but I have Ruby Jade Astrotherapy, which is my service where I do readings for people. So Ruby Jade Astrology lives there, Ruby Jade Alchemy, and actually Ruby Jade Numerology as well. So the natal chart is all about the rise, and I'm looking forward to this module. So in this module, we'll be learning the following: what is the natal chart? How can you use the natal chart? The signs, planets, and points and houses of the natal chart, and then applying the natal chart to work life. That was a tongue twister. Okay, so what you see here is actually my like brand image for Ruby Jade Astrotherapy, which is a combination of astrology and therapy. I'm actually a human development and family studies minor, and I am studying to become a CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner. So it's a combination of both. And I coined this back when I began reading for people in 2019. And I just really feel like it's so powerful getting a natal chart reading, and if you've never had one before, I would highly recommend it. It really will change your perspective on your life path and just what's happened in the past, what's happening in the present, and maybe what's going to happen in the future. It's an amazing self-empowerment tool, and it's really changed my life. And so that's why I decided that, I wanted to open up services for other people once I was finally certified. So there's a lot of definitions out there about what a natal chart is. Yet these are my favorites. So it is a snapshot of the sky at the exact moment you were born. So kind of think of it like taking a picture in the sky and seeing where all the planets are located in the sky. Obviously, the sky is divided into different constellations, and so wherever those planets are falling, they're falling actually in a sign of the zodiac. It also is a blueprint for your soul's evolution in this incarnation. So I really believe that the soul carries on and there's many lifetimes, and I believe that the soul is always trying to want to evolve. And so when you look at your natal chart here in this time frame, you can understand what you really need to focus on in this lifetime. And then my definition is a map to come home to yourself. I'm all about really living and breathing that this is a way to come home to yourself, that it's time to come home to yourself, it's time to get excited about yourself. But what's really cool is I started off this module with this quote about darkness and how, when we get dark, we're able to find glimmers of hope. And it's so easy to compare this to when you're outside looking up at the sky and it's completely pitch black, and then you see all these little constellations and the stars, and you can sometimes see planets and the moon if it's visible, but it's just really, really a awe-inspiring experience. And I know everybody on this planet has experienced it at one point in their life, so it's kind of cool that astrology is all about, the darkness. It really is. It's about using astronomy and applying it to everyday life. That's what astrology is. So this is an amazing quote, and this just shows how unique the natal birth chart is. And it is from this book called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need by Joanna Martine Woolfolk. And the quote, as you see on the screen, it says, "At the moment of your birth, the sun, moon, and planets were in particular arrangement in the heavens. This exact arrangement will not be repeated for another 4,320,000 years." It's kind of wild. She goes on to say, "This means another person with your exact horoscope will not walk on this earth for another 4,320,000 years. Even then, of course, that person will never be exactly the same because of the entirely different genetic and environmental factors." So it's basically saying that your chart won't repeat for another 4.3 million years. Kind of Wild. Alrighty. So we have gotten a good grasp on how cool astrology is and how the natal chart is a big deal. So the next part of this module is how can you use the natal chart? And the natal chart will kind of blow your mind, but sometimes you're just in complete awe that you don't know really how you can use it. And so maybe having, someone to work with to interpret your chart is a good idea, but also just learning more about how you can use it is ideal. And so that's why I felt like I needed a section in this module to kind of teach people how you can use it. So in one of my Ruby Jade astrotherapy sessions, one of my clients said, and I'll never forget it, it's an amazing quote: astrology is a tool, not a rule. And that is so important to remember as we go through this module, but as you learn more about your natal chart, or if you ever get a reading, keep this in mind. All right. My notes say in all caps lock, free will. And that definitely needed to have a slide of its own because free will is always at play in life and it will trump any transit, meaning that even if you do get a reading and let's say it's very doom and gloom and they're giving you no room for growth and they're pigeonholing you, or like let's say you have an app that's very negative, I would say maybe delete the app. There's a couple out there that I know that specifically do that to people. Just understand that you have the power to change your life and that you're the author of your book and that free will is in fact something that has so much moxie and you can use it and tap into it at any point in time. So, how can we apply the natal chart? We're going back to the question of this section in this particular module. Therefore, what you need to know is that the natal chart can be used to guide a person in everyday life, within their community, inside family matters and love, and to a sole purpose career. In this course, we will be primarily focusing on how we can use the natal chart for a career. As you can see, the natal chart comes out in all different arenas in life, and it's really, really cool how we can use it in pretty much any situation. But the main reason for it being about career is that because I am a Capricorn stellium as much as I am a Scorpio stellium. So I'm a Scorpio stellium in the house of Capricorn, actually. So I have double Capricorn energy. And Capricorn actually governs our careers. So it just felt right for the main focal point of Rise from the Ashes to be around career. All right, we're moving on. We are now on the third section of this module, and it's all about the signs, planets, and points and houses of the natal chart. So in reality, there's about 3 different big pieces to astrology, and it's the zodiac signs, which everyone talks about, and that's the horoscopes that we've probably all been introduced to in our magazine days. And then we have the planets and points, which are more related to the sky and astronomy and astronauts and all that. And then the houses are really, really specific to natal birth chart readings and applying it to your everyday life and applying it in your career. So let's first start with the the signs, because I feel like even if you've just kind of dipped your toe into the astrology world, you'll probably know what your sun sign is. And a lot of the time people just, focus on the sun, and that's great. I think that's a great talking point and a way to really get into the conversation of astrology. But obviously, there's so much more than just your sun sign, and we'll go over that later in this particular section. But here are the 12 signs of the zodiac in Western astrology, which is the astrology that I practice. Sorry. Oh my goodness. And so they are the following: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And that is actually the order that they go in. So the zodiac always begins with Aries and ends with Pisces. And there are 12 signs in total. Maybe in the background of this particular slide, you can see some of the signs. You can see some of the symbols related to the signs. But yeah, some of them are bigger than the others. And it's not because I think that those are better. Those are actually reflecting the signs and how much energy of a particular sign is represented in my natal birth chart. So that's a little preview of what we'll be doing towards the end of this module, so stick around. Okay, so once we get the 12 signs, then we also want to divide them even further to understand them even more. And so this is a way to divide the 12 signs into two subcategories, which are elements and modes. So you'll see right here that they are divided into two different subcategories. We have the elements on the left-hand side, the modes on the right-hand side, and each of them are equally important, and they're widely talked about in the astrology world when you get a little bit more advanced. So the elements are the following: fire, earth, air, and water, and they go in that order because remember, Aries does start off the zodiac and Pisces ends it. Aries is a fire sign and Pisces is a water sign. So to kind of go even further into the four elements, we'll start with fire. We have Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So any fire signs in the room, hello. Then we move on to the next element, which is Earth, and we have Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Very big year for all things Taurus, but hello to the other Earth signs, Virgo and Capricorn. Then we have Air, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. The following eclipse cycle that will be happening after this Taurus Scorpio one will be in actually Aries and Libra, so it will be a big year for Libra coming up. So hi Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius. And then finally we have the final element. It is water, and it's Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And I think I've kind of bored you to death with all the Scorpio talk, but want to say a warm hello to Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces in the room. We'll then go ahead and move on to the modes that is on the right hand side of this slide, and there are 3 modes. So cardinal, fixed, and mutable. The cardinal signs are the following. You have Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Fixed are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Big year for fixed signs, specifically Taurus and Scorpio, but Leo and Aquarius are also feeling shifts around these eclipses that are going on in Taurus and Scorpio. And then we have mutable: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Last year was a big year for mutable signs as the eclipses were in the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius. So that's pretty much it with elements and modes. And if you're more interested in this astrology and learning more about modes and elements, I actually have a whole course about this, and it's called 12, and I'm going to be relaunching it on Teachable during Sagittarius season. So you'll have an opportunity to have more of a user-friendly experience taking the course. It's a really bite-sized course. It's only 30 minutes. It's extremely affordable. And so just honestly, if you want to learn more about astrology, I go into each sign of the zodiac and I really touch on the elements and modes, and I talk about how numerology plays a part in astrology. And if you know anything about math, as an accountant would bring this up, but I named it 12 because 3 times 4, so 3 modes in astrology: cardinal, fixed, immutable, and then 4 elements in astrology: fire, earth, air, and water. If you multiply those 2 numbers, you get 12. And 12 is a huge sign, or huge number throughout astrology. We have 12 signs, 12 particular planets that we, really focus on, and then 12 houses. This is actually pulled from a slide in the 12 deck, the keynote that I made for the course, and I say this to pretty much everyone who schedules a Ruby Jade astrology reading with me, and it's, you are never just one zodiac sign, you are all 12 zodiac signs. So I touch on this more in the course 12, so if you want to learn more about that, just send me a DM and start the message off with 12, and I'll maybe do something for you if you're really wanting to get that course. It's actually my first course that I made, and I'm going to talk more about that when I look over my own chart. So we're going to be moving on from the signs now to the planets and points. And here are the main planets and points that I speak about in Ruby Jade astrology sessions. So I touch on the moon, the sun, ascendant, rising, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, North Node, Pluto, South Node, the Midheaven, the Em Celli, the part of fortune, the descendant, the ruling planet, Lilith, and you've heard me talk a lot about stellium. So obviously right now, there's more than 12 listed. Now the main planets of our solar system are the following. We have the sun and the moon. Those are luminaries. Those are not planets. Then we have Mercury, Venus, Mars. We have the asteroid Chiron, then Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Now, we've talked a lot, we as an astrologist have talked a lot about eclipses. Eclipses have to deal with the North Node and the South Node. Those are mathematical points in the sky. The rising sign or if you want to call it the ascendant, has to deal with the time of your birth, and it starts out your whole house system and how your houses are laid out in your chart, which is why it's so important to have the time of your birth. And then there's other points that I just feel like are really important, like the part of fortune and the Lilith, and you have the other sections of the chart that are equally as important as the ascendant, which are the midheaven, the Em Celli, and the descendant. And Lilith is actually a extension of the moon. It's the darkest part of the moon. It's the side of the moon that we as earthlings never see, and so it's always important to realize that there is another side to everything. So Lilith is really an interesting point to understand, and I feel like it kind of goes with the dark energy of Scorpio season. And then stellium is just a cluster of planets in a particular sign, whether it's 3 or 4, and it depends if it's points or planets, and I'll kind of go more into that as the module progresses. So these are the inner planets and the points that really shape you. They are called personal planets for a reason, and they really help develop your personality. I would say this is kind of the nature part of your chart. In psychology, there's a lot of talk about nurture versus nature. This is definitely the nature part of your chart. So you have the sun, the moon, rising, or you can call it the ascendant, Mercury, Venus, and I think my face is covering up that other planet, which is Mars. Obviously, the 3 planets are Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Sun and moon are luminaries once again, but they're big components in our solar system. And then the rising is a point in the sky, and it is where the sun is rising in the eastern horizon at the time of your birth. So it gets very detailed there. It's almost really hard to like think about that. It's so philosophical in my opinion. So it is a very important thing though. Now, these are the outer planets and points that really, I would say, nurture. This is more of the nurture part of your chart. It's not really the nature, because these are all tied to generations, and they're so far away from the sun that they cast a really large, big shadow, and they will affect a generation, because these planets stay in a sign for years compared to just months, and sometimes it's decades. So the outer planets and points are Chiron, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And Chiron is a asteroid. It's not a planet, but it's a asteroid that is in the asteroid belt of the zodiac that sits in between Mars and Jupiter. And Chiron has an orbit that actually goes all throughout the solar system, so it's hitting literally every single planet in the solar system. So it's a really big, important part of a person's chart, because it's with them throughout their entire life. Sometimes it's compared to like Saturn's energy, but it's a little different, because Chiron is with us our entire life from birth to death, where Saturn really visits us every 29 years or so. So that's the one point of the outer planets. Really, it's an asteroid, but then there's these other planets, which is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which, like I said, this is the nurture portion of your astrology. Moving on, here are other important points I like to talk about in my readings, and these were kind of on the first slide of introducing the planets and points. You have the North Node, South Node, Midheaven, Descendant, Amcheli, Part of Fortune, and then I kind of pulled it down from the rest of the list, and it's the Lilith, just because this point is really not talked about, not enough, I feel like, and I feel like a harder thing to understand, but it's been something that I've really taken some time to learn about, and I really am happy that I have learned about it. But the sun, moon, and rising, or the ascendant, are talked about most frequently. So this is a quote by my first astrology teacher, and she is the first person that kind of introduced me to this quote. I'm sure another astrologist out there has said it. I think it's just a definition that's really passed around in the astrology world, but Rebecca Gordon, she introduced me to this visual to kind of understand how the planets, signs, and the houses all work together in unison. And so she said the planets are the actors, the signs are the roles, and the houses are the stages. And that really, really helps paint a picture of like what's truly going on in an astrology chart. So moving on to the houses of astrology and of the natal chart are, here we are. You see just numbers, but these are all related to the houses. So there are 12 signs, 12 planets that we focus on, and obviously there's going to be 12 houses. Hence why I named my astrology mini course 12. So we have the first house, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, the ninth, the 10th, 11th, and the 12th. And just like the signs, there are some houses that are a little bit larger, and that has to do with my chart and where the most activity is going on in my chart. So in the first house, there's a lot of activity in my chart. There's also a lot of activity in my 10th house. I have activity going on in the 8th and the 5th. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that towards the end. Okay. So just to close out this section, because there's a lot that we went over, there is a really, really well-respected book called The 12 Houses, and it's a famous author in the astrology world, and the author is Howard Zesportas, and he says, serving as the lens to focus and personalize the planetary blueprint onto the landscape of actual life, the houses bring the chart down to earth. I love this because I think that the houses are really kind of the hardest thing to understand in astrology, and I think because of that, people bypass it and focus primarily on the signs and want to focus on like the planets because it's like something that they can kind of just grasp a little bit easier. It's you're looking at a planet, you're looking at pictures of a planet, or everyone talks about Mercury retrograde, so I feel like that's like a big thing. Or the meme accounts of astrology, and they're always like, dating a Scorpio would be like this. So I think people kind of attach themselves to those pop astrology moments, but the houses are like the glue. Like I feel like they're really what makes it so effing awesome. So without the houses, we would struggle to apply the astronomy and astrology into our everyday lives. Howard Zesportas also goes on to describe the 8th house in the following way. In the span of one lifetime, we can experience many different psychological deaths. Death is an ongoing process in nature. Like the phoenix, we may temporarily be reduced to ashes, but once we rise, we are renewed. And he describes each house in that way. He goes into extreme story time detail, and it's a really amazing book if you want to learn more about the houses. But I picked that quote specifically because it really plays to my courses in 2022. It's Not Really Over, which is all about death, dying, grieving, and learning about the afterlife. But quite frankly, it's like so on brand with Rise from the Ashes. So I just wanted to kind of share that, we're kind of living in the world of Scorpio right now, but it's because I know so much about being a Scorpio, and I have been there before where I've kind of surprised myself, like what I can do when I'm in a very hard time, like stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I just wanted to share that with you. Going to repeat that one last part of it. Like the phoenix, we may temporarily be reduced to ashes, but we rise once more renewed. So we're moving on, we're moving kind of quickly, but it's just like this information is so easy for me to talk about because for 3 years now I've been studying astrology pretty much every single day. So if I'm going too fast, the good thing about this is you can pause, you can replay. But like if you want to learn more, I really, really recommend 12. But we're going to now go into the final section of this course, section 4, and it's how to apply the natal chart to work life. Because remember, this course is all about going through a toxic work environment and learning how to rebuild yourself after suffering from something like that. So I have to do story time right now. I did start off this module by sharing some tidbits of people that are coming forward and letting me know like what's going on in their world, and it kind of made me think back to another experience while working at KPMG and trying to figure out when was the best time for me to leave that company, because busy season was all the time, and I was like, I can't leave my coworkers to fend for themselves during a busy season. And so, like you all know, I was applying for other jobs, I was interviewing pretty frequently, and I remember I was working with a recruiter, and he was like, well, when do you want to leave? And I was like, well, I've kind of timed it out in a way where I'm thinking about leaving after busy season. I don't want to like do that to people. And he looked at me and he goes, you need to like really think about yourself. And I was like, okay. And he's like, think of it this way. Think of it being like a company, falls on hard times, and because of that, they need to execute massive layoffs. And so in a New York minute, they take away your role. And so you had to think about that and realize that they are not thinking about, oh, darn, we're laying off Kenzie during this really tough time in the economy. Maybe we should wait to lay her off when we're doing a little bit better, or like, when things kind of like shape up better, where it's easier to live in this economy. They would never do that. They're always going to think about themselves. The company always thinks about themselves. So you have to think about yourself. So when you are really coming to a point where you're like, I need to leave this company, I'm going to quit, I'm going to put my 2 weeks in, whatever it is, just realize that like you don't need to think about them, because they're really not thinking about you as much as you think that they are. And I've worked with clients that had this same thought process as I did back when I was looking for a new job in 2018, and I've told them these exact words that this guy shared with me, because it was like kind of like a moment where I'll never forget it, and it's really true. So that's the story time. Hope you enjoyed it. Now we're going to move on to how to apply the natal chart to work life. And I think that story will start to kind of reveal itself in a different way, and realize that there is some huge truth to that, and how you can use your chart to really help you during those times when you are making huge, milestone decisions. So here are the planets and points of the natal chart that point to a soul purpose, career, vocation, life purpose. So it's the sun, the moon, North Node, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. These are the big like things that you want to look at when you're taking a look at your chart, and you're using your chart to help you with your calling in life. So if you want to maybe take a picture of this, write a little note down, whatever it is. These are the points and planets. So sun and moon, luminaries, north node is a point. It is connected to both the sun and the moon. That's where we get all our eclipses. South node is the other point of that, but we are really going to be working with the north node to figure out what you need to do in this lifetime, in this incarnation. Then Venus is actually attached to your value system and the way you make money. So obviously, a job is connected to the way that we make money. Mars is the way you go after things, and how you are assertive, and sometimes you need to be assertive in the work world. I mean, if you want something, you have to go after it. And Mars was governed once by Scorpio in traditional astrology. It's now modern ruler is Aries, but both Aries and Scorpio definitely know that you kind of have to have that Mars energy to get what you want. Got to hit the battlefield. And then Jupiter is a new planet that's really been something that just came on my radar that helps with career. It's really where you expand, and the sign that governs Jupiter, a lot of the time people say Pisces. I would say it's Sagittarius, and Sagittarius comes after Scorpio, and it's the one sign that visits Scorpio in the underworld. It doesn't live there as Scorpio does, but it comes back up with all this knowledge. And so it's like a planet of growth and evolution, and so there's good fortune attached to it. And it's where you expand. And when you start expanding in your career, like, that's when things get really, really sweet in life. So let's synthesize even further. So these are just like some really quick tips before we move on to the final part of this module. You want to look to the houses where these planets and points are in the natal chart. So houses show the specific areas of everyday life or fields of experience in which all this is occurring. Remember, the houses are what bring the astrology back down to earth. We had to realize that earth is also in the solar system, and we are looking at the natal chart from an earth lens. So the earth is like playing a part in it. It's like obviously the biggest observer in this whole masterpiece of the natal chart. So you have to really remember that, if we were on planet Mars, if we lived in planet Mars, it would be a totally different viewing than on Earth. Like, we would have a different pair of glasses on. So you have to realize, like, we are looking through the lens of Earth. So that's why it's so important to look at the houses and what happens on planet Earth. Then you want to feel into the signs, and you want to feel into both the high and the low vibrations of each of the signs that these planets and points are transiting in the natal chart. Remember, the signs represent 12 qualities of being or attitudes toward life. The drive of a planet is expressed through the sign in which the planet is placed. So when I say the high and low vibration, obviously there's yin and yang to every sign. There's not like a bad sign. There's not just a good sign. You have to understand that every sign has a strong point and then like a weak moment. And so if you have that knowledge when you go through your natal chart, and maybe you're confronted with a sign that you don't really think you vibe with, or you're not too excited about, you have to realize that there is a two-part story to each sign. And then lastly, are any of these specific planets and points talking with other planets and points in the natal chart? So planets represent particular psychological drives, urges, and motivations. Like verbs, they depict a certain action, what is going on. And you'll see in a natal chart that inside the chart, there's all these different lines going on. And those are actually called aspects. And maybe the lines are different colors, whether they're red, they're blue, they're green. They all represent something different, because on the line there's like a little shape. There's maybe a triangle, there's maybe a square, there's maybe a shape that is a line with two circles on both ends. There's maybe like a dotted K. They all mean different things, and that is very intermediate astrology. So we're not going to go too much into that, but I am going to show you my chart, and we are going to see the aspects in my chart and how they kind of show up. Obviously, in every chart, it's going to be different. Remember, your chart won't repeat itself for another 4.3 million years, 4,320,000 years to be exact. So just remember that. Okie dokie. All right, so let's kind of sit up, shake out, maybe grab a drink of water, and let's interpret a chart together. This is going to be fun. I've taken many astrology classes where this was like the main curriculum, where we were interpreting charts the whole time. So I have a lot of experience in this just through the courses I've taken and the clients that I've had with Ruby Jade Astrotherapy. So like I said, throughout this module, we're going to be interpreting my chart. So if you see on the screen the natal chart, and then you actually see my full name, Erin Mackenzie Dolan. Yes, my first name is Erin, and I do not go by it. My middle name is Mackenzie, and I go by my middle nickname, which is Kenzie. But yeah, I mean, when I do charts, I really do like to use the full official name if the client gives me permission. But as you see, I am a female. I am a she, her. That is, I am a woman, and I'm happy to be a woman. I was born on October 25th, 1991. That was a Friday. So that day actually attaches itself to Venus. Venus rules Fridays. Born at lunchtime during the day at 12:21 p.m. Central Standard Time. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, within the United States. And tropical is just like the type of division of the sky, and then Placidus is the house system that I use. So I don't use whole sign when I interpret charts. I use Placidus, and tropical is related to Western astrology, not sidereal. So if you get a reading with me, this is exactly what your chart is going to look like. I use AstroGold. I think it's an amazing app that really gives a pretty chart, and it's easy to read. So yeah, we're going to go through it. So I said this in the first module, which is the ashes. This year was always going to be a huge year for me, like it is for all Scorpio natal placements. But more specifically for people that are having maybe eclipses on their birthdays, which I actually happen to have a birthday then, as my birthday this year fell on one of the eclipses. There was a partial solar eclipse, new moon in Scorpio on October 25th, 2022. And so all the Scorpio placements in my chart were illuminated on this day. And, you know, I really wanted to release this course on my birthday, but, you know, I actually took time to develop the modules a little bit more and sit in the darkness of Scorpio season a little bit more, and decided that that would not be a good idea. And so I'm releasing it about a month later, but I've really used Scorpio season in the eclipse that happened on my birthday, my 31st birthday, to really develop this new course and to develop this new service that I'm offering, which is being a career coach and accountability coach. It's the new brand of my company is Ruby Jade Accountability. So it was going to be a big year, and it's happening in my 10th house, which is the career house of my chart. But also there was a total lunar eclipse in Scorpio, a blood moon on May 16th, 2022 at 25 degrees Scorpio as well. So that was actually happening in my 11th house. And I really do believe that the development of these two courses this past year have kind of opened up a new community for me. And it's been really cool to kind of see my community transform a little bit. But all in all, both of these eclipses, now I like to say that it happened at 25 degrees Scorpio because obviously that's the day of my birth. So it's a special thing. So that was the one on May 16, 2022. But yeah, there was going to be a lot of transformation in my Scorpio part of my chart, as well as the Taurus part of my chart. So down in where the 5th house actually begins, a little bit in the 4th house, there was going to be a lot of transformation, and it was going to be transformative for you in your Scorpio and Taurus houses as well. That's where that saying comes into play. You are never one sign, you're always all 12. But this is just one instance of how we can use the current transits to understand how we will be affected. Eclipses are great ways to do, you know, predictive astrology, or just like matching up synastry of two different charts, so the current transits and then your natal birth chart. This is also I would say that it's like a great like example of both nurture and nature occurring in astrology. So the nurture would be the current transits, because those are changing every day, and so those are going to affect people. But the nature is your chart. So let's focus on my chart, this natal astrology birth chart. It's I would say, looking at it as a whole, it's the nature part of astrology, even though I kind of broke up the different planets in nature and nurture. But if you look at it as a whole, it's telling a story. Remember, it's a roadmap, or it's a blueprint, or it's a snapshot. It's literally a book that you're reading. And an astrologist's job is not to tell you how to live your life or what to do in your life. It's interpreting this language that's here on the chart, and how to, you know, read this language. So astrology really is a language. It's not a belief system. I think that you can believe in it, but I really believe it's a language. It's a language. So let's focus on the natal astrology birth chart solely. We've been talking about my chart some, especially the stelliums. So the easiest way to spot a stellium is a big clump of signs or activity or planets. So if you go by the house numbers, which are here kind of in the middle of the chart, you'll see 1 through 12. You can see my Scorpio stellium going on in the 10th house. And then another stellium in the sign of Capricorn in the 1st house. So the Scorpio stellium has 4 planets, and then this Capricorn stellium has 2 planets and 2 points. So in my opinion, the Scorpio stellium actually pulls more weight. And if you think about it, like this, my sun sign is like obviously the big thing, the big kahuna, like what people talk about the most. The fact that the sun is in the Scorpio stellium, that's another indication that it's going to be pulling more weight. I also have Mars, Mercury, and Pluto. It's consisting of all personal planets except for Pluto. That's a generational planet, that's an outer planet. But this is the current day ruling planet of Scorpio, Pluto. And so it's almost like that Scorpio energy is intensified because Pluto is there. So that stellium to me is something that I really always have paid attention to ever since I got my chart. But then when I've had my chart interpreted by other astrologists and then interpreted it on my own, there was always this inner knowing, and I was being told that there was going to be huge transformation within the career sector of my life, and that maybe I would have had many careers, and maybe I would need to like fail a little bit or rise from the ashes a little bit in my career world. And as you can tell through this course alone, I've worn many hats in the working world. I've told you about, working in accounting and marketing, and a lot of people have asked me, how did I do that? I'm going to go more into that in Module 3. But also, I've worked many part-time jobs, worked in the service industry, have walked dogs, was a career specialist, sold jewelry, was an intern at an insurance company, have worked at my dad's company for people that have Alzheimer's and dementia diseases called Dolan Memory Care Homes. I've applied to like sales jobs and interior design companies. I mean, I just have a interest in working in a lot of different fields, and obviously being a certified astrologist, I'm opening up a door where it's way more spiritual, and I'm meeting people that have been so successful in the world, and just learning the ins and outs of it have been really interesting. So yes, that is totally spot on for me, that stellium there. So taking on so many roles, I've gained a lot of experience that I feel like it is my life calling to be a career coach as a Scorpio. I am naturally drawn to the occult and the mysteries of life, which is why I chose to become a certified astrologist and really took it seriously. I'm trying to become a professional astrologist where I'm like, an Eliza Kelly or a Natalia Benson or a Rebecca Gordon, because I truly believe it's like something that is so needed. I use astrology to fill in the blanks and show people that there are other things that we don't have control over always occurring in the background of our lives. Astrology is the one thing that has gotten me out of that hole, that deep, dark cave, that place where nothing was working and I kept getting pushed down. It's made me realize that it's a way to step out, a way out of the negativity, and it's reminded me not to just dwell on things that are negative. So I'm going to move to the next slide because unfortunately my notes only have a limit. And so I want you to kind of, before I switch the slide, maybe take a picture of my chart because I'm going to talk more about it. But just if you can't take a picture and you just want to kind of visualize it in your head, just know that all my activity in the 10th is in Scorpio. Most of my activity in the 1st is Capricorn, except for my Saturn, which is in Aquarius. Then I have my moon sign in the 5th house in Gemini. And in the 8th house, I have Virgo energy. And it's the two planets in the natal chart that really point to like a slam dunk in like career, like where to focus my career on. Like if I focus on these areas, it's going to pay off. And I'm going to teach you more about that. But just take a mental note. Obviously, I have a little bit of other energy going on. I have my Lilith in Sagittarius hanging out in the 12th house. This is the house where it's like the hours before I took my first breath on Earth, and then I have stuff going on in the 7th house, my South Node in Cancer, and then I have my Port of Fortune and Chiron in Leo, my chart. And I would have to say that relationships are a very healing thing for me, and I've learned many lessons around them. And I learn them every day. So, yes, that is so true. And I feel like, I've lived many past lives as a Cancer, as a caretaker, but in this lifetime, as a Capricorn North Node, and just having that Capricorn rising, it's like this is the lifetime to make something out of my life and to create a company like Ruby Jade Rituals. So, moving on. So, what I love about the Scorpio stellium is that it's a great introduction into my other stellium. My other stellium, like I said, is in Capricorn, and my Capricorn rising and stellium is happening in the 1st house, which is actually the house of Aries, which is ruled by the planet Mars, which is the planet of action. And when you look at both Capricorn and Aries, you realize that no, they are not the same element. One of them is earth, the other one is fire. However, they are the same mode. They are both cardinal signs, which is all about initiation, which goes back to that Mars. And I believe Mars in Scorpio is definitely talking to, let's see, yes, it is talking to my Capricorn energy. So the Mars in Scorpio here is talking to my Capricorn energy. So there's that as well. So just going back to that initiation point of both Capricorn and Aries as cardinal signs, I like to say I'm here and I'm ready to be professional. I feel like I've always kind of had that professional, mature vibe growing up, always kind of been like an old soul. Have kind of just like never understood why like people aren't as serious as I am. I'm very serious. I have a lot of Capricorn energy, a lot of earth energy. Actually, it's the one element that's showing up the most in my chart, even though I have this huge Scorpio stellium. So, yes, I have always been in that serious role. And so I feel like when I went through the professional world and I had all these experiences and like was uncovering all these like unfortunate truths about like some of these companies, I was just like, I was so like defeated in a way, but I think it was totally a part of my journey. I mean, having Pluto in the 10th house totally meant that I needed to have moments of rude awakenings to really uncover what I'm meant to do in this lifetime. So, obviously, I love astrology because it's kind of this dark magic, you know? But I also really enjoyed being a career specialist at MU Career Center. I mean, it was probably one of my favorite jobs, and I interpreted Strengths Quest, which reminds me so much of interpreting a natal chart. I mean, it's obviously very different, but there's that same service aspect to both of those things. But I realized that, you know, there's a part of me that's really good about being professional. And so I'm going to help you tackle your resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, negotiation strategy, and your acceptance letter. I realized that Rise from the Ashes really did need to have a professional vibe to it, and it needed to be about career. That's why, even though I have had so many toxic experiences in my life in so many different arenas of my lifetime, it needed to be about the working world. I realized in this house, so the house of Aries, but with the Capricorn stellium, I realized in this house that creating my own passion project is in the stars, not the cards, but the stars for me. So this is why I got a call from the cosmos to create Ruby Jade Rituals. I also realized that working under others full time is not really for me with my Capricorn North Node. So that is why, as my company grows, I choose to work part time for other people. Near my Capricorn stellium is my Saturn in Aquarius, and right now I am in my Saturn return. I did admit that. My Saturn return actually officially happened on the Great Conjunction on December 21st, 2020, which was a very rare event that only happens, I think, every 21 years or so. You can't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's that. So, like I said, I'm connected to the cosmos. Oh my God, like having my Saturn return on that day and then having this eclipse on my birthday, and really thinking about all the eclipses that have been going on the past 3 years when I started this journey of Ruby Jade Rituals. You know, my Capricorn part of my chart has felt it, which is the Capricorn rising, the Capricorn North Node, the Capricorn stellium. And then the following year, it was my Gemini moon was feeling it, and now my Scorpio sun. And so it's been 3 years of huge changes. Eclipses are all about times of change and catapulting you 6 months forward and 6 months backward and connecting past, present, and future. And so it's been a really interesting part of my life. And then as I go through my Saturn return, and then I'm realizing, you know, Pluto is transiting the current Pluto transit, which is it's in Capricorn. It's been transiting my first house, like all of my teenage years, all of my 20s, and it will be like transiting in my first house, you know, up until my mid 30s. It's been transformative. My life has been transformative. I can't say it's been this jolly old thing, and I think that's maybe why I am so serious, but I think that there needs to be someone like me. I mean, like we said in the beginning of this course, like your chart is not repeating for 4.3 million years. I mean, it's kind of wild. And so astrology helps you get excited about your unique natal chart. So going back to the Great Conjunction and my Saturn return, this was also when I first launched Ruby Jade Academy, which is the brand of Ruby Jade Rituals that houses online courses. And my tagline is the age of new learning is here, and it's in the sign of the future. Or sorry, Saturn is in the sign of the future, Aquarius. So that to me was very Aquarian. And since Saturn has moved into Aquarius, which was back in 2020, I have been really growing into my adulthood. That was the year that I did lose my job at MSG and really took time to sit with myself and sit in the darkness and understand if I wanted to go back and reposition myself in the corporate world. And I decided that no, it wasn't for me. But I love that my Saturn is in this sign of the unconventional, because looking at my chart, my ruling planet, so I'm going to go back to my chart. The first planet that is near the ascendant is Uranus. And so Uranus is actually attached to Aquarius. And I really do value being a unique individual. And so having Saturn in Aquarius kind of like really helped blossom that feeling that I have of having Uranus being my ruling planet. The ruling planet is the first planet that kind of is rising up to the horizon, or to the rising sign. So for me, it's Uranus, but you should look on your chart and figure out what your ruling planet is. So in 2021, so last year, I went through a business coaching container with astrologist Natalia Benson, and she taught me the importance of looking at both Venus and Jupiter, and mine happened to be in a conjunction with one another. So my Jupiter and Venus are in the sky together at the time of my birth. They're both living in the 8th house, which is Scorpio's true home. So like I have double Capricorn energy in my chart, where I have the Scorpio stellium in the 10th, and then I have the Capricorn stellium in the 1st. I have double Capricorn, but I also have double Scorpio energy. So I have the Scorpio stellium that's happening in the 10th, but then I have this conjunction of Venus and Jupiter happening in the 8th house, the house of Scorpio. Here is where all things dark live, and these planets really come alive on this stage. So I tend to really connect with people when I talk about taboo topics. My Venus in Virgo is sextiling my Mercury in Scorpio. So Mercury is all about communication, and I have great connections with people when I do talk about hard times. Kind of like always that person where people like really open up to me, and I feel like it pays off in my astrotherapy sessions. I also feel like this is my secret sauce as a Scorpio, and it really does pay off, like I was saying, when I do open the floodgates, whether it's in Ruby Jade Airwaves or just in my courses or on social, and I welcome this dark energy into my life, my realm, and space. So when I was in Conscious Babe Business School, also known as CBBS or Jupiter Club, with Natalia Benson and all the other women that were going through it in 2021, one of the assignments was to come up with products or services to sell within our businesses. And so I came up with 2 courses, one about death and one about rebirth, and they totally encompass this 8th house vibe. And I did it specifically because I was looking at where my Jupiter and Venus was, and it was in the 8th house, and it's in Virgo. And it's things that I feel like are like kind of just simple. They're not really simple, but I feel like there is not like a hidden agenda with these topics. It's like it is what it is, and Virgo is like kind of all about like just working at something that is what it is. There's no like hidden truths to like that. And so being able to kind of just work with these cycles of death and rebirth was like really easy for me to do. So It's Not Really Over and Rise from the Ashes are all about hard times. I mean, at the end of the day, having a physical death or having a psychological death, it's all about a hard time. So it's like that's where that simplicity of Virgo comes through. And sometimes people ask me if it's hard to do this, and to be honest with you, my answer is no, because it feels like I'm truly aligning with my strengths. So all in all, I have used my chart to understand myself when traditional therapists couldn't help me anymore. I'm a big fan of therapy. I've done group therapy, psychotherapy, which is one-on-one talk therapy, and I've used books with DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and CBT. But I realized that astrology was that tool that was helping me understand myself so much more. It's this cosmic self-exploration tool. And so being a Gemini moon, I love to talk, and while I'm on this cosmic self-exploration journey, it's really opened up so many doors with like-minded people. And so I've really traveled down many paths, and Gemini is all about moving. And so talking to like-minded people like Rebecca Gordon or Nicole Rush, who's a Reiki master, Brianna Davis, who's a hair healer, Natalia Benson, Morgan Fava, which is an Akashic Records reader, Nikki Cosmo, which was my hypnotherapist, Eliza Kelly, and just more and more to come. This tool, astrology, has made me excited about me and my future. And I really feel like I finally came home to myself because of astrology. And I want you to come home to yourself too. So, it's time to rise. All right. I'm going to see you in the final module. You're doing so well.